You probably imagine a medieval blacksmith as a lone craftsman hammering swords for knights beside a glowing forge. It is one of history's most recognizable images. But that picture hides the real story. A medieval blacksmith was not simply making metal. He operated one of the most capital-intensive businesses in the village. His workshop consumed huge amounts of fuel, relied on unstable supply chains, required years of specialized training, depended on political protection, and survived only by serving many different customers. The sword on the wall rarely paid the bills. The real money came from solving everyday problems, one piece of iron at a time. Once you understand how a blacksmith earned a living, you realize the forge was one of the economic engines of medieval civilization. Forge meant owning infrastructure. Farmers needed plows, hoes, axes, and horseshoes. Builders required nails, hinges, locks, and chisels. Millers, carpenters, merchants, soldiers, and even churches all depended on iron tools and constant repairs. Without blacksmith flowed, construction stalled, trade became harder, and armies lost mobility. Unlike bakers or brewers, blacksmiths produced productive capital. Their work made everyone else more efficient, much like modern companies that manufacture industrial machinery. Importance came with enormous costs. Opening a forge required major investment. A workshop needed a stone building, a forge, an expensive anvil, bellows, hammers, tongs, grinding stones, and dozens of specialized tools. Every tool represented months of labor, wore out over time, and had to be replaced. With no banks to provide loans, startup capital usually came from inheritance, wealthy patrons, guild connections, partnerships, or decades of savings. Fuel became one of the biggest ongoing expenses. Charcoal required vast amounts of timber, Europe's population grew, wood became increasingly expensive. Rising charcoal prices squeezed profits, forcing blacksmiths to decide whether to raise prices or absorb the costs, exactly the dilemma modern manufacturers face when energy prices rise. Iron created another challenge. Supply depended on local mines, skilled smelters, transportation, and political stability. Delays caused by war, floods, or bandits could stop production for weeks. Managing inventory became essential. Too little iron meant losing customers. Too much tied up valuable capital. Medieval blacksmiths were practicing working capital management centuries before economists gave it a name. Yet, the greatest investment was knowledge. Apprentices often trained for 7 years or more, learning how to judge temperature without thermometers, control carbon content, harden blades, and prevent cracks. These skills lived inside experienced craftsmen. Knowledge itself became capital. Customers might not understand the technical differences, but they noticed which horseshoes lasted longer and which plows survived entire harvests. Reputation became pricing power. Reliability created customer loyalty, and loyalty created stable income. Demand also changed throughout the year. Spring brought farming tools and horseshoes. Summer focused on repairs. Autumn prepared equipment for winter, while winter shifted toward household goods, locks, hinges, and custom work. Successful blacksmiths diversified. Swords were prestigious, but farmers provided reliable, recurring business. This explains one of history's biggest misconceptions. Swordsmith was rarely the most profitable blacksmith. A fine sword required days or even weeks of careful work, tying up the entire workshop while dozens of farmers waited with broken plows, axes, and wagon wheels. Weeks spent on one luxury commission meant turning away many smaller jobs that generated steady cash flow. Modern economists call this opportunity cost. Repairs often produced better profits because they required less iron while keeping customers returning year after year. In many ways, the blacksmith resembled an industrial maintenance contractor more than a luxury manufacturer. Every repaired plow meant crops planted on time. Every repaired wagon kept trade moving. Every sharpened axe increased productivity. The blacksmith wasn't simply making tools. He was protecting the productive capacity of the local economy. That role became even more important because medieval society had almost no safety margin. A broken plow during planting season could reduce an entire harvest, raising food prices and threatening political stability. What looked like a broken piece of iron could eventually become a social crisis. Rulers understood this. Kings, monasteries, and feudal lords often granted skilled blacksmiths tax privileges, favorable leases, or military contracts. Guilds also regulated the profession, limiting competition while maintaining quality standards. Restricting entry protected craftsmen's investments but also reduced competition and slowed innovation, a debate that still exists today. Location also mattered. Blacksmiths in busy market towns served merchants, travelers, builders, and soldiers, giving them far more opportunities than rural smiths who depended on a small number of local families. Growing cities encouraged specialization in locks, armor, nails, or decorative ironwork, improving efficiency but increasing dependence on a single market. Successful workshops rarely remained one-man businesses. Apprentices, journeymen, and family members expanded production but also increased costs. Training required sacrificing short-term productivity for long-term growth. Yet every apprentice also represented a future competitor, forcing masters to balance expansion with protecting their business. The forge itself faced constant danger. Fire could destroy years of investment overnight, and without insurance, the owner absorbed the entire loss. Risk management existed long before spreadsheets. Most customers only saw sparks and glowing iron. They never saw the constant business decisions behind the scenes. Should prices rise after timber became expensive? Would more iron arrive before winter? Was it better to accept one nobleman's large commission or complete 20 smaller village repairs? Those invisible decisions determined whether a forge survived, because the true product of a medieval blacksmith was never iron alone. It was reliability. Reliability has always been one of the most valuable commodities in any economy. Reliability also created influence. The forge became one of the busiest meeting places in the village, where farmers, merchants, travelers, and soldiers exchanged news. Smart blacksmith knew which roads were unsafe, where iron prices were rising, and when war was approaching. Information reduced uncertainty, allowing him to prepare before everyone else. The forge became more than a workshop. It became an economic observatory, created another challenge. Coins were scarce. So many farmers needed tools before they could pay. Blacksmiths often repaired equipment on credit, expecting payment after harvest. In effect, they became local bankers, lending productive capacity instead of money. Trust became collateral. If harvests failed, payments disappeared. Too many unpaid debts meant the blacksmith could no longer buy charcoal or iron, proving that even profitable businesses can fail from poor cash flow. Taxes added further pressure through rents, tolls, guild fees, tithes, and production taxes. Yet rulers sometimes reduced these burdens because attracting a productive blacksmith benefited the entire local economy, an early version of modern investment incentives. Competition never disappeared. Rival blacksmiths forced prices lower, craftsmen to compete through quality, speed, specialization, or superior service. Differentiation existed long before modern marketing. War offered both opportunity and danger. Military contracts could bring enormous profits, but they also depended on uncertain political outcomes. Defeat, invasion, or disrupted trade routes could destroy the very business war had enriched. The strongest blacksmiths never relied entirely on military work. They balanced wartime contracts with the everyday needs of farmers, merchants, and ordinary families. Because eventually every boom ends, and only resilient businesses remain standing.